Welcome back to 15th Street Automotive. Today we're looking at a 2008 Chevy Tahoe, 5.3 liter. Customer states it's got a check engine light on it, and it has a clunking when you accelerate. So let's take a look at this one. Alright, we got code P0016 cam crank correlation, and we have a P0521 engine oil pressure sensor performance. We're going to go after the P0521 first, and then we'll look at that P0016. That one's going to be possibly a little more involved. So let's get into that P0521 first.
Morning, Steve.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
For the electrical.
We're going to set our range a little differently so we get a better picture. Okay, so oil pressure right now is at a regular constant 17.98. Typically, what's common on these things for that code is the oil pressure sending unit, this little sensor on the back of the engine. They fail. Real common problem. But you got to make sure that when it does fail, you still have oil pressure, because you can have other issues causing low oil pressure, like a stuck valve in the oil filter can do it, a faulty oil pump, a plugged oil pickup. Lots of things can cause that problem, so you need to be able to verify that you actually have oil pressure when that thing drops out. It sets the code, and it will it sets the code, and it will turn that light on as soon as you drop below, I think it's 5 psi. So we're just going to leave it sit here and run for a little bit and keep an eye on it. See if the light's not on, the oil pressure light's not on, and we've got good oil pressure right now. So we'll see what happens when it warms up a little bit, and see if it drops out. Oh, there it is. So the oil pressure drops below 5 psi, and the light comes on, or the indicator comes on. Let me show you on the dash. You can see on the dash that the oil pressure light is on. That light will be on, and that dinging will go on until the oil pressure picks up above 5 psi. Now, if we had a problem with oil pressure, typically, if it was a pump or a pickup or something like that, or a leak, we would, if we stepped on the accelerator and picked up the RPMs, we would typically get more oil pressure, and it would start, it would turn that indicator off. So our oil pressure is stuck below 5 psi now, and that light's just going to continue to stay on, and that dinging is going to continue to ring. You can see on the scanner that we are getting less than 4 psi, whether we bring the RPMs up or whatever we do. We get a little bit of a bump in there, but I suspect our problem is a sensor, but we're going to I have an adapter that goes in place of the oil filter, and that'll tell us the actual oil pressure. So what we'll do is we'll hook that up and start it up and wait till the pressure drops again, and then see what happens with the actual oil pressure. So the oil pressure is, or oil level is not really low. It's midway in that hash mark there. It's not super clean, but it's there, and it's not bad. Our problem is not necessarily quantity or quality of oil. I suspect our problem is an oil pressure switch on the back of the engine there. So this is the kit that I use to check my oil pressure, the actual oil pressure. We pull the filter off, and it's hotter than blazes. Pull the filter off, and then we match this adapter up with the filter that we have. This goes in place of the filter, and then this attaches to the quick disconnect there, and it gives us the reading that we want to have as it runs. And what happens is that thing will drop below 5 psi on the scanner. It'll turn that indicator on, and then we can look underneath here and see what we have. And we're probably going to end up having, 25 psi when the scanner's reading 5. Sensors is very common on there, but we can't assume that it's a sensor. We have to test. We have to make sure that the actual oil pressure is there when the scanner's reading low. If that's the case, then our problem is is either one, the sensor, or there's a screen underneath that sensor that can plug up. Not very common. I've actually never seen that. I've heard of it happening. I've never seen it. It's always been a sensor. And we replace that screen when we do the sensor anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, we're going to get this set up, figure out what adapters we need to make it work, and then we're going to install this. Got to make sure that the O-ring that you use is the same size O-ring so you don't have a blowout. So that's the right O-ring. So here is the setup that we have. There's the adapter. Comes off to the hose, and we have the hose, or the gauge on the hose. So we're going to start this thing up, let it run, wait until that oil pressure drops, and then we're going to check our pressure. And then we'll check our pressure on the gauge. It's right there. Okay, with the engine running, we're running about 30 psi right there. No indication on the dash yet, but that's our pressure. Let's go look at the scanner, see what it's reading. Scanner is confirming that we have 30 psi, so everything's working the way it's supposed to right now. So I was convinced that we had a bad oil pressure sending unit. Super common on these things. The failure mode was exactly what we were experiencing. But when I pulled the oil filter off and stuck our oil filter adapter on there so we could check oil pressure, the oil pressure went to, I didn't change anything with the oil, just the filter. The oil pressure went up to a steady 23 psi and never wavered. I left it run here for 45 minutes. Monitored the oil pressure, it never went below 23. So I suspect we had a check valve in that oil filter starting to fail. He was way over his oil change. He was his last oil change was a year ago. You can't even read the sticker on the windshield. But history shows it was a year ago that we did it. And we use quality oil filters. It's an AC Delco filter, factory style filter, and it I suspect a combination of the oil filter check valve and maybe the quality of the oil. The oil had broken down quite a bit, was the cause of that oil pressure dropping off. I never experienced actual low oil pressure. I only got to see it on the scan tool and on the when the telltale light would come on, and the gauge on the dash. They would show low. So I changed the oil, changed the filter, had it running here for about a half hour, just idling. It's hot, it's fully warmed up, 210 degrees. let me show you the gauges, and I'll show you the scanner. This is after, I mean, this is fully warmed up, so this is what we got going right now. So as you can see, the oil pressure is probably about close to 30 psi on the gauge. No light on in the dash, no telltale light. And over here on the scan tool, we've got a steady 30 psi. Hasn't dropped below that 30 psi mark since I changed the oil. So I'm gonna go drive it to make sure that, because I got the symptoms to happen more when I drove it. So I'm gonna go drive it and see if our pressure changes. I don't suspect it will. I suspect that our problem was a combination of worn out oil and a worn out oil filter. Alright, I just returned from about a 5-mile road test. It's fully warmed up. The light never came back on. The oil pressure never dropped below what it is, what you're seeing right there, 28, 26 psi. Before we were just running it, we were running about 10 or 11 psi. So, and when the problem wasn't occurring. So, this time the problem was oil and an oil filter that was way overdue. So this one's a fix. Thanks for watching.